Alright, so we just had the campfire chat, guys. I'm recording this live on stream, so you have a lot of people here that cannot say hi, YouTube. But there is a lot of stuff to go through in this update, and they have talked about the itemization changes, there's hell tide changes, there's class changes, there is a new endgame system, the pit, there is boss ladder updates, and a lot of other stuff that I'm gonna go through as fast as possible in this. So this was a 2-hour campfire. I'm gonna try to break it down as much as possible. We had a lot of devs here as well. There's the two Joes, there was Adam Jackson, there was, I don't remember his name actually, but here, Charles Dunn. So he's one of the game designers as well. Adam Fletcher was there. So it was a really packed lineup. And well, let's get into it. So what you need to know is Season 4 is changing the entire game, and I'm not not being hyperbolic here. This is literally what's going to happen. So in general, the sentiment on stream was going from D4 bad to mostly D4 good, it seems. I have a poll for that as well to show later. But in general, the impressions are very good. So I've seen the stuff before. I was not really surprised by a lot of things here. Before we continue with the video, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, boot.dev. They've created a platform that makes it easier than ever to get into programming and polish your skills. They believe that the easiest way to learn code is to make sure that you're never bored, and this is why they have designed their courses to feel more like a game and less like a chore. The only way to really get into programming is to get your hands busy and write a ton of code, and this is exactly what the tasks allow you to do without ever feeling like you're getting stuck, because they have tons of tools to help you out. In these courses, you're going to learn backend programming from start to finish in the Python and Go languages. You can earn XP, levels, achievements, and even get on a global leaderboard if you want to get real competitive. And if you ever get stuck, you have Boots, the Bear Wizard AI that helps you out and understand the problem so that you can find a solution. The courses at boot.dev are designed to go deep, teach you the fundamentals, and make you build your first projects. Compared to attending a university course, boot.dev is a way cheaper solution and allows you the flexibility of doing it all at your own pace and from home. They offer both a monthly and annual subscription, and you can cancel in the first 30 days, no questions asked. So if you really want to learn coding and that convinced you, then go check out boot.dev with the link in the description or the pinned comment below, and you get 25% off your first payment to boot.dev by clicking that link or using my code. And now, let's go back to the video. But I'm gonna try to give you the update here. So what you need to know is items are completely changing. So first of all, there's gonna be way fewer affixes, there's gonna be more potent affixes, and legendaries now only drop with 3 affixes. So hear me out, there is going to be more affixes you can put on these items. So it's going to be way easier to parse what is actually dropping on the ground. There's going to be less of it. And in general, this whole like flood of loot is going to disappear. So here's an example of a new item. For example, we have, this is an old one here, and this is like a new one where it's like more simplified. You have int, damage, vulnerable damage, etc. And stuff like this lucky hit, execute thing, stuff like damage to shadow damage over time, affected enemies, you know, damage on Tuesdays. That stuff is gone. And it's way, way simpler now. And you can actually put more stuff onto these items later. So there is some other updates here. So you're going to see 925 loot much earlier, much more often. So basically everything in the late game is going to be 925 by default. They also simplified some stuff, gems, etc. And yeah, the general idea is that you get less loot, and they set like quality over quantity, basically. There's also some other small changes, item rewarding gold cost capped, so that's kind of nice. It's much easier to actually also, like, you know, finish your item basically when you find one. Yeah, removed materials, consolidated things. You can get forgotten souls now from whispers and from elites. They mentioned that there's sometimes going to be like some loot explosions of materials that are like really exciting. And in general, they said that they want to make loot more exciting, and they have a pretty good way of doing that, I think. So another update here is also uniques are going to start dropping earlier. So World Tier 1 and 2, you can find most uniques. World Tier 3, you can find all of them. Even Uber uniques, you can find them in World Tier 3 now, and potentially get extremely lucky if you get them very early. Here's an example of the new tempering system. So there is going to be 2 crafting systems layered on top of each other. The first one is tempering, the second one is masterworking. So what tempering does is that you can add up to 2 extra affixes to an item. So you're gonna see this Oh, sorry, this is actually the codex update first. So in the, yeah, that's in the codex update as well. So let's go over that real quick. TLDR, codex powers now get salvaged into the codex directly, and you can put any power into the codex and always imprint them over and over again. So you see this here. It says here on the bottom of the item, upgrades an item in the codex, and you salvage it, it goes into the codex, and you have a new interface here. You can filter for stuff, and you kind of like rank up those codex powers with higher drops. They also mentioned that there's going to be higher power legendary aspects in World Tier 4, so you don't just get a perfect one in like level 20 and then you never look back, but you can actually find higher rolls as well, and generally they improve the potency of these legendary powers. Here's the filter. You can even like favorite aspects for your build, for example. You can do only your class, newly acquired, etc. So you can actually find exactly the stuff you want in this codex now. And you can always imprint whatever you want. Now, a lot of people will also ask for like loadouts and stuff. I think they said that it's not yet, or maybe they didn't talk about it, but either way, it's not coming. But I think at least the system would open up the possibility for this in the future. So I kind of expect this for like Season 5 maybe, or for the expansion maybe. Okay, let's talk about tempering. So since I was talking about the itemization, so tempering allows you to add 2 new affixes to an item that you have found. And you're going to find these manuals. I think there's a screenshot here. You can find basically recipes and unlock them. And at the blacksmith, you can take an item and then add basically a random one of a certain recipe on the item. So for example, there's this natural motion thing here that has like any kind of like movement, speed related things and mobility related things. And here's like the bone thing for necromancers that has like bone splinter stuff, bone spear stuff, whatever. And there's a lot of interesting affixes that actually customize your build a little bit. For example, increased AoE size, more projectiles, maybe faster attack speed, more movement speed, cooldown, lots of stuff that actually like, feel impactful and are, kind of like exciting. They showed us a few of these examples. Here's what the interface looks like. So you find an item, you can have 2 of these tempered affixes. So on the left, you see an item that is like baseline. And on the right, you see an item that is tempered with 2 different affixes. So you just take this, add 2 stats. You have a few attempts. So you can't do this like all the time. But when you find an item, you have a few tries to try and get a random one of this recipe of a certain thing. So I think you have more screenshots here. So they did this live on the stream. They took this bow, and then you have this drop down here where you have multiple recipes, and they see here they have like a bunch of them unlocked. There's like an offensive recipe for a bow, for example, and here's, for example, shadow step damage, dash damage, shadow clone damage, etc. And I think you have another one. They chose like here's marksman thing, for example. There's marksman damage, marksman crit chance, marksman crit damage, famous damage, and yeah, some of those more interesting ones as well that we saw. For example, here charge, cooldown reduction, etc. And then you have like this little animation that plays, and this is tempered now. And then you can basically go back and you can temper again, and you can like put 2 separate of these categories here. So you see here there's like weapon, offense, defense, utility, mobility, and resource, each with their list of recipes, each with their list of stats, and you can actually have a lot of kind of like customization on your build basically. So while the items that drop on the ground are very simple, you can put a lot of extra stuff there later. So this is the tempering system. So that's kind of like the first step in how you continue with your items. Then come the greater affixes. So this is also more drop related, but basically you can find, well, if you've played Last Epoch lately, exalted items. So there's going to be higher rolls of drop only stats that you can find. So this is an example here. They have like this golden brownish color basically, or beige color. And they go 50% higher than before. And it seems like they always roll the maximum as well, as you can see here, at least in the examples they've given us. And when an item drops, you will immediately be able to tell that it has greater affixes because it has these Roman numerals here. It says like this little Roman 2, and there can be like 1, 2, or 3 of them. And this also applies to uniques. So you can actually find copies of uniques that have higher stats than other copies of uniques, including Uber uniques, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, actually there was something. Oh, yeah, okay, this is another thing, tradable. You can trade everything as well, legendaries and uniques, but not uber uniques. But either way, yeah, we have these greater affixes now that drop on items. So this will continue to make loot exciting, basically. Or this is the idea behind it, so that you find a legendary on the ground, and later on when you look for only the GG stuff, you know, very rarely you're gonna find an item that has a 3 out of 3 greater affixes. You're gonna pick it up and you're gonna be pogging out basically. So that's the idea here. So here's this example again, where you have like these two affixes. These are greater affixes, and this is a normal one. You can reroll these affixes with the occultist, so that works just like normal, but they will not be greater after rerolling. But you could change one of them if you want to. And here's another example. For example, here this is like you know, the greater versus the non-greater version. Now comes the Masterworking. So this is the second crafting system. So that comes after tempering. First you put 2 extra stats for a total of 5, and then you can increase those stats. So this is going to replace the existing blacksmith upgrades and the jeweler upgrades basically, where you get 12 ranks. Each of them gives you a small increase, a 5% increase to all of the stats, minus the implicits it seems. And every 4 ranks you get a bonus to one of the stats randomly. So you can see an example here. Here's rank 2, rank 3, and rank 4. And you see here that, for example, the crit damage goes up a little bit. It goes from 5.1 to 5.3. And then at rank 4, you get like this blue number here. So this hits one of the stats randomly. In this case, the maximum life. And it's got a much bigger boost. I think they set numbers, so it's 5% for the normal ranks. And then every 4 ranks, it's like, I think a 20 or 25% boost for one of the stats. And this can hit the same item multiple times, or the same stat multiple times. So you can have like a 3 out of 3, like omega juiced up greater affix of something you really want. And some of those stats can be pretty impactful, like resource cost reduction, movement speed, cooldown reduction, skill ranks, this kind of stuff. If you hit exactly the right thing, you can get some pretty GG outcome here. So while tempering has this durability, so you see this here, there's like this temporary durability. You can only try this a few times per item. Masterworking can be repeated, but it's much more late game and much more costly. So you can kind of like masterwork over and over to try to hit exactly the right stats, or try to get like in at least 2 out of 3 on the right stat that you want to boost or something like that. So here's an example. This blue number is like you know, 1 bonus upgrade. The yellow number is like a 2 bonus upgrades from Masterworking. So there's like a 12 out of 12. So this is all 3. And there can also be 3 out of 3, which is like another color. So it's going to be a much bigger boost. And you see here also, like, for example, this is where the item started. 83 int, and it's getting into like 140 int. The 23% damage went to like 45, it's like doubled basically. And yeah, the other stats improved a little bit here, like 50-ish% or something. So some examples here. And in this case, you can also hit the tempered affixes with this. So if there's like some specific stats that you really want to get, then you can, you know, make like a much larger AoE, or you can like, you know, make much shorter cooldown, or these kind of things for certain things. Here's a new item. So there's the class updates here. Adam Jackson was talking a little bit. You get a new uber unique Tyrio's Might that has basically a little artillery shrine built in. Kind of funny, looks pretty OP. So that's kind of what the uber uniques are. And well, this is one of those examples as well, where you have maximum resistance to all elements. That is certainly a stat that works really well with greater affixes and the Masterworking system. So you can, you know, get insane amounts of tankiness, I guess, if you hit this, for example. But yeah, uber unique, gonna be hard to get. Some other examples, they talked about the general philosophy of this patch. There's going to be just a few little tidbits they gave us here, but TLDR, they wanted to make just things much more accessible, much more open. They removed a lot of restrictions of like procs or even class restrictions. For example, Azurath is now a cross-class item. Stuff like that, basically. They make pets a lot better. You see this here, 100% of the player stats are getting inherited, so maybe Companion Druid is a thing now. They're buffing a lot of stuff here, lots of new uniques, etc. So as I said, just a few examples here. A few nerfs are in there as well, obviously for the Barbarian and for some of these OP unique items as well. But we don't really know where the game balance will end up after this. So all of this is mostly buffs, I guess, but it will probably mean that they're gonna make the game generally a bit harder, I guess. And there's also gonna be new endgame stuff later that will really be like the ultimate challenge, basically. So we're gonna go into that in a second. Some bug fixes here, so Asus Ferocity, evade cooldown reduction is getting fixed, so teleports doesn't make you fly across the entire map all the time anymore. Here's also some stuff of examples, for example, all these like proc-based affixes like Dust Devils and Desecrated Ground and you know, grenades. All these things are getting mega buffed. In fact, they scale with your weapon now, so you can actually scale all these things now to late game much easier. You don't have to like find the same aspect over and over again. Here's a few examples of, for example, Lacerate on Druid that they mega buffed. You get now a 40% damage buff after using Lacerate for your shapeshifting skills, so you can do like some combos there, and then like, you know, burst down certain elites or something, for example. Here's a new item for Sorks, Frozen Orb meta. That item will certainly not break any servers, I think. So this thing allows you to shoot Frozen Orbs, and they spawn conjurations, and they shoot more Frozen Orbs. Yeah, that is gonna be wild. And here's an inner sight buff for rogues, get some crit and you fill it more easily. Here's Necromancer stuff, where all of the Book of the Dead was basically revamped a little bit. For example, here you get cooldown reduction now, you get vulnerable easily, you get a pull from the Golem Slam, stuff like that. So they make everything a bit more exciting. The flat damage effects, I talked about them. And here, for example, the Azarath, and also the grenade stuff. On like grenade rogue is probably going to be a thing. Hardcore, so that made me very happy, I gotta say. The cheat deaths are gone, so finally, after a lot of feedback videos and some personal talks to this, hardcore is actually hardcore now, so log in. Now, let's talk about the Helltide. So Helltide is basically Blood Harvest 2.0 finally. So this is something I expected for Season 3 already, but I guess they weren't ready for this. But now it's coming, so they're adding a lot of like little events. There's like a new public boss that spawns. There's like basically Bloodseekers hunting you. They're called Hellborn. They can drop Zermats, so you can also like kind of farm stuff there. You in general just have a lot more stuff going on. They actually showed us a bit of gameplay here. Where you have like these new like little pillars, and there's like, you know, monsters spawning, sometimes like an ambush, and here's like some, you know, summoning ritual you can do, and there's a boss walking around, and there's like this threat meter up here. Do you see that? Yes. So there's basically a lot of stuff going on, and I expect it's gonna feel a lot more like the Blood Harvest did, and a lot more action, a lot more stuff happening. Here's Harbinger spawning, for example. There's a lot more Forgotten Souls drops. So in general, you probably don't have to farm as much Helltide as before, and it's going to be more exciting. So I'm kind of excited for this. And you can do it from World Tier 1 already, from level 1 basically. So that's kind of cool. There's also like some new materials and some new elixirs that we saw here, but we don't really know much about them. There's rune shards and elixir of momentum and yeah, some stuff that I captured basically. So there might be some revamps here for some of these systems. But yeah, here's also one of these Hellborns, for example, basically the Bloodseeker. Like a very tanky elite that uses like player abilities and stuff like that. So like they also have like an icon here, for example. So sounds really cool. Here's a new boss, by the way. Andariel is coming, so I guess a lot of people already expected that. That is going to be one of the new Uber bosses, and in fact there is a huge update to this entire boss system. I'm going to go through that real quick here. So the boss ladder updates. So there's going to be level 200 versions of each boss now. So this means like Grigar, Lord Zir, Duriel, Andariel, and so on. So all of them gonna get a level 200 version that is supposedly extremely hard. And yeah, you get boss materials like from many more places, like Whisper caches can now drop them randomly, events can drop them randomly, and in general you get more of them. So it's gonna be easier to access those bosses, and you have like these super high level, super hard versions of bosses. I'm very excited for these. And you can only acquire them, or you can only summon them with the Stygian stones that you get from the pit. So let's go back to that real quick. The pit. So that is, well, basically rifts. So basically greater rifts from Diablo 3. So there's like this little portal activator. It's called the Artificers Obelisk. And you open up this thing and it has this drop down list with extra like, you know, tiers. And apparently it's going to be hundreds of tiers of difficulty. So effectively an infinite system, or nearly infinite system that gets harder and harder as you go. They said that this unlocks the first time you do a tier 45 Nightmare dungeon, and it basically just goes on and on forever from there. You need like this rune shard. I think this is actually this rune shard that we saw there in the Helltide to open one, so you can't just chain them back to back to back all the time, but we don't know how often they will drop. I expect you can do this quite a lot, but not all the time. And basically this is where you're gonna go and really like push your build to the maximum basically. And this is also where you get a lot of the materials that you need for the crafting, especially the Masterworking and also the level 200 bosses. So they showed us a run here, so this was on the stream. Basically you have a 10-minute timer, you get a penalty for dying, but you don't get kicked out like in Abattoir of Zir. And instead you lose this Artificer's Mastery bonus reward. I think this is for Masterworking. So if you go too high and you die all the time, then you're not going to get the Masterworking rewards. But basically going to higher tiers will reward you with more loot, better loot, and more Masterworking materials. So that's kind of like the main reason to go in there, so that you can upgrade your items. And as I mentioned, you can redo Masterworking. So in case you don't hit the Masterworking on exactly the right stats and you want to really boost a certain stat, then you want to redo this on your item. And like this, you want to kind of like chain run these things and try to get the perfect items in the end. So that's kind of the idea here. The way these things are structured is there's 2 floors of completely randomized maps. So you see here, this is like, this, desert town map, for example, and there's skellies, and then there's floor 2, and there's another random map. So here's like this archives with like, I don't know, bandits and stuff. And once you fill the bar, there is a portal spawning to a boss fight. And this boss fight is actually, mostly the normal boss fights that we know, but there's a twist. And this is that there is a second boss appearing with like a shade and doing like an attack sometimes. So here we saw like this campaign boss here. There's like this, I don't know what it's called, like from the campaign from Act 1. This succubus boss, for example, she was like coming in and doing like these swipe attacks there and some other stuff you had to dodge. And they mentioned that at later stages, there's actually going to be like more bosses, or there's going to be like multiple attacks you have to dodge while fighting a normal boss. And it sounds kind of interesting. So a bit like the Maven encounters in PoE, for example, where you just have like more stuff going on that spices up the boss fights a little bit. So that is definitely really exciting. Great Earths are coming basically, and the system sounds really fun. So I'm really excited to go on the PTR and try this out. And that's going to be these materials here. So this is what I mentioned. There's like certain materials dropping in certain tiers, and as you go higher, get these better materials. I expect that this magic one is, for example, Masterworking 1 to 4, and then this one is like 5 to 8, and this one is like 9 to 12, for example. So you can kind of like rank up your items more and more as you go deeper into the pit, and then you can kind of like farm all of them on the higher levels. So that's probably how that's going to work. Yeah, and that was also pretty much it for the summary. There is some stuff in the Q&A, so I'm just going to check that real quick if I missed something. But there was a few more details that I talked about here. So people asked about legacy items, for example. So that like basically old items are going to be legacy. They cannot be crafted with tempering and masterworking and stuff like that if you're depending on Eternal. We don't have the Season 4 preview yet. That will come later. So this is all just base game updates that we just saw. And we're going to hear a lot more about Season 4 sometime soon. Speaking of Season 4, is delayed, so it's going to be on the May 14th. So they are taking a few more weeks, basically. They're going to do PTR from April 2nd to April 9. So save the date. I'm going to be blasting non-stop on the PTR, trying to get everything done that I can. And then, we're going to be pumping out build guides, etc. for the actual season start. But it's going to be mid-May. And they didn't say this year, but I just expect this. So probably August Season 5, and then Season 6 is probably the expansion already. So kind of big. Some other stuff here. The camera is zoomed out a bit more than before. Actually, I forgot to mention that. So in those screenshots here, you can see this a little bit. So the camera is definitely further away. A lot of people notice that. And that is an option now. So that is actually, you can have the normal zoom as before, and you can have a further zoom. And it looks much better in my opinion. So that's kind of cool. So we have that. And what else? No loot filter is coming, but they specifically addressed this and they said that the idea is basically you don't get that much loot that you would need one. I guess we'll see. Personally, I don't think that is going to be really necessary, but it may be nice to have loot filters maybe in the future. So let's see what they will say and what they will do in the future. And I basically talked about everything here. Did I miss anything? I'm asking chat now if there's anything I didn't mention now that is important for the YouTube video. Otherwise, that was a summary. So I'm very excited. I think in general, most people are excited here. And I'm going to be blasting the PDR. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to be pumping out some more videos going more into detail about my thoughts about the individual changes. For example, the health height, for example, the crafting. There's going to be a lot of stuff to think about here. For example, I also went through like the list of uniques earlier and, kind of like looked for some opportunities of like really crazy stuff that you can do with greater affixes and masterworking. So it's going to be kind of interesting, yeah. Cheers, YouTube. Yeah, we can turn on the chat for a second. So you can say hi, YouTube, if you want. But yeah, that was a summary. Hope you enjoyed it. And as I mentioned, more stuff is coming. I'm going to keep you guys updated. And see you guys next time.